Hush now and lean in. These pines been whisperin' all evening, telling me a tale stitched from wind and memory. And Lord, they said it's time somebody heard it. The Widow of Honeycomb Hollow. Long before the new road carved its way through the Bluewood Mountains, there was a tucked-away place folks called Honeycomb Hollow, a quiet dip in the ridge where the wind always seemed to hum some old tune. And living right at the heart of that hollow was Miss Eulalie Branch, an old widow woman with silver-threaded hair and a voice soft as creek moss. Miss Eulalie had lived on that ridge since girlhood. She and her late husband, Deacon Branch, had raised 3 children, tended a stubborn patch of land, and kept a cabin that smelled of cedar, sweetbread, and wood smoke. After the deacon passed, folks thought she might fold into herself like a winter leaf, but Eulalie didn't fade. She deepened like a well that had found a new spring. What made her special wasn't just her kindness. It was the way the pines spoke to her. Behind her cabin stood a stand of tall, ancient pines, so old their trunks twisted like braided rope. When the wind moved through them, they didn't just rustle. They whispered, soft, low, almost like words. Most folks said it was just the ridge talking, the way mountains do. But Eulalie knew better. She'd been hearing those whispers since she was a child. Every morning she'd step onto her porch, wrap her shawl tight, and listen. "Morning, babies," she'd murmur. "What y'all got to tell me today?" Sometimes the pines answered with a hush like a sigh, sometimes with a flutter like a laughter, and sometimes, on the rare days when the air felt thick with meaning, they whispered something that made her pause. The winter everything changed was the harshest the ridge had seen in decades. Snow piled high as a mule's shoulder. The creek froze solid. Roads vanished under drifts. Folks in the valley couldn't reach the mountain stores. Hunger crept close. But Miss Eulalie stayed calm. One night, as the wind howled like a lonely spirit, she heard the pines whispering urgently, sharp, quick, like a warning. She lit her lantern, pulled on her boots, and stepped outside. "All right now," she said, breath fogging the air. "Show me." The pines bent in the wind, pointing their long arms toward the ridge path. Eulalie followed, her lantern swinging. The wind guided her like a hand on her back. They led her to a place she hadn't walked in years, a narrow hollow tucked between 2 boulders. There, sheltered from the worst of the cold, she found a forgotten root cellar built by her husband's grandfather. Inside were jars of dried beans, sacks of cornmeal, smoked meat, and winter apples, enough to feed half the ridge. The next morning, she loaded her old mule and went door to door, sharing what she'd found. Children who'd gone to bed hungry now warmed their bellies. Elders who'd been shivering by empty cupboards felt strength return to their bones. When spring finally came, folks said it was Miss Eulalie Branch who saved them, but Eulalie just shook her head. "Wasn't me," she'd say, patting her shawl. "It was the ridge talking. I just listened." As the years rolled on, Miss Eulalie grew slower, softer, quieter, but the pines never stopped whispering to her. On warm evenings, neighbors would see her rocking on her porch, eyes half closed, listening to the wind weave stories through the branches. And when she passed, peacefully in her sleep, the wind that night was gentle. The pines swayed in a slow, mournful rhythm, whispering a song that carried all the way down the ridge. Folks said it sounded like a farewell. Others said it sounded like gratitude. To this day, if you walk through Honeycomb Hollow at dusk, you might hear a faint whisper rising from the pines. And if you listen close, real close, you'll swear you hear a woman's voice woven into the wind, warm as a quilt and soft as a prayer. What the pines whisper in the dark, the soul carries into the light,